Respected masters, esteemed Secretary General, and all the distinguished guests and virtuous individuals present here this evening, good evening, everyone. Most of the individuals who are present here today are probably entrepreneurs. We operate and manage businesses, but what exactly is the fundamental purpose of truly starting a company? Yeah, this question should be easy to answer. Isn't it all about making money? No one starts a company without the intention of making money, right? Of course, there are other factors as well, Jen, but profit is still the most important one. There is a very important iron rule in the way of business and righteousness. There are a total of 7 iron rules. What is one of these iron rules? It is that doing business is just like playing chess. In what way are they the same? It's not truly about who ultimately wins more, but rather about who consistently makes fewer significant mistakes. When you do a lot of things right, but you also make a lot of mistakes, it may seem like you have a good chance of winning, but in reality, you are getting further and further away from success. So in fact, every entrepreneur in the overall day-to-day process of running a business operations, we will inevitably experience some confusion. Whether it is the profound Buddhist teachings that we diligently study today or the business principles we learn, what are we basically learning? We are learning to understand and comprehend reason. That is to say, when we are actively pursuing profit, what exactly should we be carefully considering? The single most important part of the entire day's lessons is what we comprehensively call social responsibility. When our interests come into conflict with morality, so how exactly do we find a suitable balance? What then is the primary focus of our very next lesson? What is the precise title of this important topic? Does everyone present here have the detailed brochure readily in hand? What is the primary and central focus of our lesson tonight? The unity of righteousness and profit. It doesn't mean you should give up profit for righteousness. Basically, it tells you that you need both profit and principles. Isn't this part quite difficult? Of course, there are times when it is difficult. And that's exactly where we need to learn. Just now, Professor Pan was very compassionate. He told us that next we will invite a distinguished guest to share with us the way of the unity of righteousness and profit. So, who have we invited? As we just saw, it is one of our teachers. Khenpo Sodargye will be giving us this lesson. Although our teacher specializes in Vajrayana Buddhism, his studies actually encompass Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. He also has deep insights into the classics of Confucianism and Taoism. Moreover, the scope of his Dharma teachings truly extends across the entire globe. He has established presences in Europe, Asia, and North America. Even in places like Nepal, India, and Bhutan, his numerous acts of giving can be found throughout his life. Now, let us warmly welcome our esteemed teacher with the most solemn and truly enthusiastic applause to invite him to the stage. He will interpret for us the profound path of the unity of righteousness and profit. Please warmly welcome our esteemed teacher.
It is a truly great honor for me to be here today, to participate in the 8th World Business Ethics Forum. Everyone present here is also very wise and virtuous, full of profound compassion and heartfelt gratitude. What a truly outstanding and remarkably young team we have here today. Just moments ago, I had the distinct privilege of observing various intricate aspects of the participants gathered at this significant conference. This included carefully noting your thoughtful expressions, the profound depth of your collective wisdom, and indeed, every single one of you was radiating a truly unique and inspiring atmosphere. Today, I have been specifically asked to speak about the fundamental and important principle of the unity of righteousness and profit. Actually, I am not an entrepreneur. It's actually quite a unique and somewhat unexpected experience for me to be speaking to entrepreneurs today. You know, I am a monk by profession and calling. However, perhaps when it comes to the fundamental principles of effective management and the continuous process of learning, as well as certain profound aspects of both Confucian and Buddhist cultural philosophies and traditions, I have a certain interest in these areas. Or perhaps I have indeed gained some valuable insights from my extensive research in these complex fields. So, in this welcoming kind of setting, I'm also very happy and genuinely relaxed to communicate with everyone present here. The main content of my upcoming talk will include the following key points. First, let us begin then with the fundamental concepts of righteousness and profit that were discussed in the topic. Let me take a moment to carefully analyze these two concepts a bit further. Usually, when we talk about righteousness and profit here, righteousness refers to matters of justice. Profit can have both negative and positive connotations. If we talk about profit in a positive sense, for example, benefiting both oneself and others, or benefiting all sentient beings and so on, in such cases, it carries a positive meaning. But here, profit refers to what Buddhism calls fame and gain, or the pursuit of material benefit. Or in other words, pursuing one's own interests regardless of anything else. At this point, it may carry a somewhat negative meaning indeed. As for righteousness here, we can also regard it as a fundamental and deeply significant concept of justice. In Confucian culture, we frequently discuss and extensively emphasize core virtues such as benevolence, wisdom, propriety, righteousness, and trustworthiness, among others, which are considered essential principles. At such times, we would typically say it represents compassion, responsibility, morality, and ethics. From this perspective, and as for righteousness, I think in terms of its literal meaning in Chinese, its traditional form can also be said to be not the simplified character. But if you look at the traditional character, the top part is sheep and the bottom part is me. The so-called sheep on top carries a sense of compassion, just like the good in kindness, or the virtue in moral virtue, and so on and so forth in a similar manner. I am able to be kind. This is a meaning of righteousness. As for profit, it's made up of the grain radical on the left and the lie, strength knife, radical on the right. The grain radical refers to obtaining crops or acquiring one's own wealth. That's how the ancients saw it. The lie, strength knife, is a kind of weapon. To gain personal benefit, it carries the implication of a weapon. So in order to obtain one's own interest, one might use weapons, harming oneself or others. This meaning is also present. So today, to bring together two completely opposite things like this, compassion and lack of compassion, or benefit and harm, and to skillfully combine these two important meanings in my talk today, it might be a bit difficult to achieve, especially in our current modern era, where people pursue their own interests, often disregarding many moral principles and behaviors. Such is the age we live in. In this era, if we try to fully discuss how to effectively combine morality with our pursuit of financial gain, I'm afraid it is indeed quite a challenging endeavor. Especially for all of you dedicated entrepreneurs gathered here today, you probably already know from your own experiences that the kinder and more compassionate you become, the more you consistently and genuinely abide by established moral standards and ethical rules, perhaps in such a fiercely competitive and increasingly challenging modern era. Large corporations may either swallow up many of your small and medium-sized businesses or destroy you through various means. Such possibilities do indeed exist. So in this truly very special era, we must take responsibility for both society and ourselves, and we cannot lose our fundamental conscience, our inherent morality, or our core ethics. At the same time, in a market economy that is so profoundly self-centered, in such a truly unique period, how do we play our own role, and how do we strike a balance between these two aspects? This is a dilemma faced by many entrepreneurs today, and by many people who are actively engaged in business. It is both a significant contradiction and a considerable challenge, and it is a situation that is extremely difficult to adjust to or to overcome. At this critical point, we may certainly need to use our own inner wisdom to carefully analyze the situation. When analyzing thoroughly, I think it is absolutely necessary to look back respectfully at our rich traditional culture and also to recognize the current market economy's various different schools of thought and diverse evolving theories. When we combine these two, we may come to understand As truly outstanding entrepreneurs in this modern era today, what exactly should we, as responsible leaders, do? So today, I would first like to talk about this significant era of putting profit before principle. That is, when we see our own interests, we tend to often forget about the concepts of justice and morality, such as the era we live in. Why do I say this? I think everyone present here is undoubtedly well aware of this situation. Nowadays, it can be clearly stated that in order to obtain certain specific personal interests, many truly valuable ideas and fundamental principles are often disregarded and are gradually being eroded little by little in this era. Especially now, it can be truly said that the entire world at this very moment is centered around the global economy, a very particular kind of mindset. So what are many of us really doing in such turbulent times? If we honestly look at our contemporary world, everyone can easily see it clearly. For example, something that happened just a few short months ago. There was a young girl named Xu Yuyu who had just been successfully admitted to college. She had managed with great difficulty to raise 9,900 yuan, but before she even started college, all her tuition money was stolen by a scam phone call she received online. Afterwards, she felt extremely heartbroken. She thought, our family is already in such a difficult situation, and yet, at this time, there are still people who would scam me. And then she took her own life. This incident caused a nationwide sensation. What was the reason behind it? It was the use of fraudulent means to cheat someone out of all their tuition money. This reflects the moral conduct of certain people. It wasn't just this teenage student who was deceived. Even a respected professor from Tsinghua University, at 53 years of age, also unfortunately received a deceptive scam call online. Later, over 10 million yuan he had saved to buy a house was swindled from him. It was already gone. So what is the reason for this? Ordinary people in society, unfortunately, also frequently receive scam calls. Even highly educated professors from Tsinghua University can fall for them. Just the day before yesterday, I went to Shanghai Jiaotong University. Not long ago, the dean of their School of Information Security, he also cited some truly reliable and very current data from the internet. So what exactly did he profoundly say? In mainland China nowadays, every single year, that is, specifically in 2016, relying on various scams or using deceptive online information to deliberately deceive innocent others, this criminal activity has already become a massive black industry. So how many people are engaged in this? 1.6 million people. Actually, 1.6 million people truly specialize in using internet calls to scam others. And the amount of money involved in a year is 117.2 billion yuan. That's a very significant, indeed enormous amount of money. In fact, this is very reliable and publicly available information. So let's think about it. Approximately 1.6 million people are actively dedicated every single day to this kind of activity, primarily through the internet. Even for me, just this time when I went out, in less than a month, I received 3 phone calls. One person said to me, "Is this your name? Is this your phone number? Do you have a bank card like this?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm from the Chengdu Public Security Bureau. There are some matters concerning you." I said, "If you're really from the Chengdu Public Security Bureau, it just so happens that I'm in Chengdu right now." I said, "Where are you? I'll come find you directly." Then he stopped calling me. Maybe many of you have experienced this too, right? Received a lot of these kinds of scam calls. Actually, in these cases, many people are truly driven by profit. They absolutely have no sense of morality. Because for no reason at all, we can see from the Xu Yuyu case, they never even consider where this person's money comes from or what it's for. They never even stop to consider what specific kind of work this individual actually performs. They use this kind of method to take the significant benefits that each of us has rightfully earned. What exactly is this kind of acquisition? Perhaps all of us here, we should carefully consider what our moral bottom line has truly become. This is indeed something that we profoundly need to deeply think about. Actually, in this modern world, many individuals truly disregard almost everything for the sole sake of personal profit. This particular kind of culture is truly pervasive, widely spreading throughout the entire world. This is truly frightening. Many of you who run businesses or are in commerce should be very wise and also very clear about this particular situation. So the primary reason for this actually doesn't have much to do with Asian or Eastern culture at all. More importantly, I think it is related to the Western self-centered perspective and their profit-maximizing way of thinking. On one hand, this has significantly improved our overall productivity and elevated the living standards of numerous people. There are indeed substantial advantages to this, furthermore, But on the other hand, people all over the entire world now, following the fundamental ideas of Western economics, of Adam Smith, the so-called widely recognized father of modern economics, have adopted his core concepts, and everyone around the entire globe has become extremely and profoundly selfish and very concerned only with their own affairs. Many people will stop at nothing, using all kinds of means to destroy our moral bottom line. When I say this, some of you might feel that this is a bit of an exaggeration, that it can't be that bad. Actually, many of us have a considerable amount of confidence in the influential economist Adam Smith. But in a certain sense, it may be some of his specific ideas. I have personally and specifically studied some of his significant works in detail before that are particularly relevant, including his earlier work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. In fact, when he wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments, he emphasized boundaries in personality and ethics. But later, when he wrote The Wealth of Nations, it was actually centered on economics. But many people from both the East and the West later on, even though The Theory of Moral Sentiments was translated into the languages of countries all over the world, very few people can actually make use of it today. People only follow the ideas from The Wealth of Nations. Globally, with Britain at the center, many countries have become extremely selfish because Adam Smith was from the 18th century. Actually, at that particular time, for the entire world, whether it was specifically in terms of economics or cultural aspects, there was an unprecedented major transformation. What exactly was this truly major transformation? If we carefully look at many diverse corners of the world at that particular time, we clearly saw, especially among many Westerners, their inherent sense of self and their complete monopolization of their own interests. Their intense struggle for these interests was very obvious. You all know that back then, Great Britain last year, when I was chatting with a distinguished professor in the United Kingdom, I said, I've been to many places, and I feel that you British are especially selfish. You used to advocate for the whole world to be your colonies, the empire on which the sun never sets, the empire where the sun never goes down. You wanted the whole world to belong to you. At that time, they really did have that kind of power, but why did they do this? On a larger scale, it was all about interest. It all comes down to the word profit or interest.
As we all know, yesterday was Thanksgiving. Actually, Thanksgiving is a rather strange and somewhat peculiar holiday. This is primarily because when the British colonists first landed in the Americas, after their challenging and arduous journey, the indigenous Native Americans generously and crucially saved them. After being saved, once they had gained some strength, they killed all the Native Americans. They discovered that the Americas were full of gold and treasures. At that time, in order to obtain them, not only did they not show gratitude, they killed all the Native Americans. Now, in many American museums, they express gratitude to the Native Americans. Why are they grateful? Because they took over all of their land. To show their gratitude, they used this holiday. But in fact, they themselves have admitted it. Originally, the Native Americans had shown kindness to the British, but later they were all, in order to gain benefits, the British took over everything. In the end, it seems that around 1776, the Declaration of Independence of the United States was issued. At that time, the United States was also in conflict with Britain. Britain originally wanted to dominate the whole world, but in the end, the United States became independent. This country that became independent at that time
also had conflicts with Britain over their respective interests. Finally, in 1783, Britain was forced to recognize their independence. So this was a major defeat for Britain, because at that particular time, Britain had truly wanted to keep America entirely for itself. However, it ultimately ended up becoming an independent American nation, effectively turning into another distinct country. So what exactly was Britain thinking at that crucial moment? Or one could also say, what were their thoughts later on as well? Because at that time, their entire colonial layout was established around the 1600s. Basically, since the 15th century, they had been actively setting up colonies all over the world. When I went to India, I also learned that the British colonial presence was quite extensive and deeply rooted there. That Britain occupied them for nearly 200 years. Including the period of semi-colonial rule, it was almost 200 years in total. But the period when they truly controlled India should be from 1849 to 1950. A full 100 years of complete control. Why did they really occupy India at that particular time? Because India possessed a great abundance of natural resources, and India's own diverse religions were also quite fragmented. The ethnic groups were divided as well. They saw that there were especially good resources here. At that time, there were also many others, Spain, the Netherlands, and even France. They were all competing with each other on Indian soil. Later, Britain emerged victorious. Then they began to forcibly seize the resources here, all for profit. Then they went to Australia. When they arrived in Australia, they also discovered, at that time, the British later on, probably around the start of the Enlightenment, became a bit more humanitarian. At that time, there were too many people in British prisons. So they thought about making New Zealand and Australia special places just for sending prisoners. Then when they eventually arrived at that location, they systematically killed or completely wiped out all the indigenous people as they saw fit and according to their own will. So sometimes when we carefully consider and reflect upon it, I just saw that some Westerners might not be happy about this. But no matter what, history should be something everyone acknowledges. Human history, in fact, has often been a very bloody and violent history. If we look at it from a long-term perspective, it was all done for the sake of profit. That includes Japan at that particular time as well. Whether it was invading China, Korea, or even South Korea, and even Singapore was included. What was it all for? It was for profit. And what is profit? It means there were lots and lots of treasures. At that time, there was a saying in Britain, which was, the Indians, our trading partners, supply us with their valuable tea, and the Chinese, in turn, purchase our opium. As for the Australians, we, the British, sent our convicts there. In this way, we had abundant and valuable resources all over the entire world. This also included the vast and rich Americas at that particular time, from the 15th to the 19th century, all of this. Why didn't they wipe out all the black people in Africa back then? Why didn't they exterminate them completely? It was because they thought they were useful. The extensive black slave trade started in the 15th century. They were primarily used specifically as mere tools for arduous mining. All these black people were consistently treated as nothing more than tools. This was also a very clear form of exploitation. So any sovereignist is also acting to achieve their own goals. On a national scale, there is this kind of pervasive expansionist mindset. Under such a mindset, I think some of Adam Smith's foundational economic theories, actually, Adam Smith was Scottish, as everyone widely knows, are particularly relevant. Some of his ideas are very popular among young people today. They're extremely well received and widely embraced. We also agree that they have their inherent power and lasting value. This is undeniable. But at certain specific times, while we may be actively expanding our own personal interests, we might ignore everything around us. At such times, it's very possible that you might create a monopoly. You might swallow up, you might cover everything. You might seize all the available resources entirely for yourself, potentially causing other companies and various other businesses to slowly head down a completely different and perhaps detrimental path. This scenario is indeed a very frightening and concerning thing to consider. Just now, Mr. Wen, through the established path of his company, was able to achieve his objectives, to help many employees, including within a single week. What I just observed and saw was that when there really isn't any significant work to be done or any tasks to complete, then employees work 4 days and rest at home for 3 days. Actually, for many new companies, this is also truly a very good way to show care for employees. I've always felt that entrepreneurs are truly remarkable. They shoulder a great deal of significant social responsibility. It's not just about improving their own valuable resources in various crucial aspects, but more importantly, every single employee within the organization has a family that profoundly relies on them. Every single family is an integral part of our broader society. If an entrepreneur can genuinely help 100 individual people, then 100 families are also being significantly helped. If they manage to help 200 people, then 200 people have already now received help. It's not just about their wages and salaries. More importantly, if we provide them with some moral education or share some profound and insightful worldly wisdom with them, then they gain both significant spiritual nourishment and substantial material wealth, truly killing two birds with one stone. So for these individuals, the immense benefits are truly beyond words. Therefore, I strongly believe that modern entrepreneurs, particularly in this current and rapidly evolving era, are indeed within the broader societal framework the truly influential leading thinkers who actively and significantly shape the prevailing mainstream culture. This is something that I think has become quite apparent recently. Take the US elections, for example. As a monk, I have also been very closely observing their every single word and action. On one hand, this is also a significant trend in society. You could truly say it's just the very tip of the iceberg. We can also see from this, for the whole world, it also serves as a kind of signal. In today's era, leaders are not necessarily that important, nor are writers necessarily that important. And perhaps artists aren't that important either. So who is important then? It's money. Money is very important. If you have money, perhaps in a very short period of time, you can achieve significant progress and make a real difference. You can accomplish anything. But at this point in time, we really shouldn't become overly proud of ourselves or become excessively arrogant and overly conceited. Otherwise, it's very easy to stumble and fall. The fundamental laws of this world are actually quite unpredictable and inherently unstable. It's a challenging path full of unexpected ups and downs, intricate twists and turns, and constant, inevitable changes. When each of us looks back on the road of our own life, everyone is in pursuit of happiness. But on the road to pursuing happiness, in reality, we also encounter a great deal of suffering. There isn't a single person whose entire life is absolutely perfect, who has never encountered any suffering at all. From elementary school onwards, no one has gone through this life without facing difficulties. Whether it's in your relationships or in your daily life, or if you've never faced even a single setback in your work, I'm afraid it's almost impossible to find such a person. So on the one hand, as entrepreneurs, we may need to learn about all aspects of life. What is our life really? It's made up of black and white, joy and suffering, or success and failure, all these unpredictable factors. Today, I might become someone who is admired by thousands, even tens of thousands of people, a truly remarkable person. But tomorrow, it's very possible that everyone will indeed start to criticize and slander me. Just like the Korean person I met earlier, I also specifically asked him, I said to him, "What do you think of Park Geun-hye now, at this moment?" He answered in a tactful way. Then I said, at the beginning, so many people supported her. When Park Geun-hye became president, so many people were so moved they wanted to cry. But now, how many people are criticizing her? It was as if within just a month or two, she barely had time to take the stage before she had to step down. Actually, people are quite strange. It's just like our Thanksgiving yesterday. Thanksgiving is originally a Western holiday. And the origin of this holiday, every time I mention Thanksgiving, I feel like, from a conscience standpoint, it's hard to accept. But if we just look at the words gratitude and thankfulness, we should indeed be grateful to those who have shown us kindness. That's right. A lot of people are learning this nowadays as well. But are we learning to be grateful, or are we just copying their actions? And what exactly are their actions? When we are in particular need, we eat other people's chickens, but once we are in much better shape, we will kill you and drive you far away. When I went to the continent of Africa, I personally saw a great deal of this kind of truly tragic history. I saw the repetition of self-interest. And even now, it's still like this. There are more than 50 countries in Africa. Some of these countries, because in the past, black people had absolutely no freedom at all, but after Mandela came to power, now they have barely managed to gain their freedom. But for the majority, some of the mainstream culture and such things are still very much in the hands of white people. And then in various African countries and in many places all around the entire world, including the United States, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Hungary, Portugal, and many other European countries, for example, they provide them with various different resources and powerful weapons so that they will fight among themselves. Whoever ultimately wins, that particular country can then effectively utilize their valuable resources. China seems to be doing relatively well there. They run some businesses themselves, and from what I've seen, haven't gotten involved in their affairs. Maybe I just haven't seen it, but I've been to a few countries and didn't see it. They just honestly run some businesses over there. I think that's actually pretty good. But a lot of Western countries just let them fight each other. They let two tribes fight against each other, and then I provide you with whatever you need. If you have a lot of mineral resources here, once you win, I'll work with you and use my advanced technology and various specialized tools to begin extracting valuable resources. So sometimes when we travel to many different places, all around the entire world actually, whether it is us humans, large and powerful countries, or even our own small businesses, it's important to consider all of them tend to be quite truly selfish. Selfishness and self-interest are quite pronounced and evident for this particular reason. Maybe some selective Western economic theories are actually very beneficial overall. And then there's the well-known theorist Friedman, who also won the notable Nobel Prize. Some of his significant and influential ideas have also had a certain notable impact. Because of this, we strongly feel that today's innovative entrepreneurs, your fundamental mindset and your entire way of thinking sometimes also need to be carefully examined and thoroughly evaluated. When we take a moment to reflect, are we truly helping those around us in a meaningful way? Or am I perhaps monopolizing all the resources entirely for myself and not sharing them with anyone else? I distinctly remember in the past, actually, Japan also had a lot of very selfish and self-serving ideas, including when they were from Germany at the time. They learned a lot of advanced science and technology and then developed all kinds of different technologies, which also caused harm in various corners of the world. There were such cases. But Japan has still preserved many thousand-year and hundred-year-old cultural traditions. There's a company called Kikkoman. I don't know if you've heard of it. I once saw some real stories about them. At that time, they were actually, it seems they also had a history of about 300 years. Back then, they used some scientific methods for research and development, and they did it exceptionally well. By 1950, many small and medium-sized companies that were actively selling soy sauce were significantly hit by an economic crisis that deeply affected their operations. A lot of them went bankrupt almost immediately. At that particular time, Kikkoman Soy Sauce, their company, generously shared their closely guarded secret recipe with everyone. If it were us in a similar situation, perhaps we would not have been inclined to undertake such an open and magnanimous gesture. At that moment, my opportunity had already come. When a financial crisis hits and all the businesses around you collapse, we probably would never have done that. If you share your secret recipe with them, many of those small businesses around them were saved at the time. After being successfully saved, a significant miracle happened. Not only did it not cause any harm to their own company, but they actually became more and more prosperous. Nowadays, over 100 countries currently in the world, their soy sauces is truly a consistent bestseller globally. Actually, sometimes according to some of our fundamental Buddhist principles, people should truly be said to have an altruistic mind. This means genuinely assisting others and contributing to others unconditionally. I once read in a truly insightful book that the greatest and most profound secret to successfully making money in this world is, in essence, the profound act of giving. In the rich traditions of Buddhism, we have a deeply significant concept known as the paramita of generosity. Through this profound and selfless act of giving, not only do many sentient beings immensely benefit, but in the end, it comes back to oneself. You will also receive real benefits to a considerable extent. This is a particular kind of law. Many people are not necessarily able to fully grasp this important law, therefore perhaps everyone present here. It is important that we should also reflect deeply on this from time to time. We should consistently strive to improve our wisdom and understanding. I recall an instance where I once saw a particularly insightful and humorous Spanish comic strip. What was the actual name of that comic book? The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters. In this intriguing and visually compelling comic, there is a central figure with his head resting on a book, having fallen asleep. But at that moment, there are many shadowy owls and fluttering bats directly behind him. Many such truly demonic and persistent obstacles are already tightly entangling his entire body. The meaning is that when we, with a selfish and self-centered mind, only care about our own interests, then let this selfishness cover up our wisdom, allowing ourselves to become deeply and completely immersed in a profound state of slumber. For the time being, we may indeed appear to be quite successful and highly prestigious, but it is very likely that, without truly realizing it, a kind of inner demon and adverse conditions have already quietly appeared by your side. We often say there is misfortune within fortune and fortune within misfortune. When you truly feel that you should be the most powerful person in the entire world, that absolutely no one else can truly compare to your unique and formidable presence, You may not realize that at that very moment, your adverse conditions and obstacles are already clearly and evidently emerging. This is also very much possible. Therefore, in the entire process of being a person and diligently doing things, I sincerely hope that everyone can truly have a profound sense of conscience and a clear awareness, and always act with a deep sense of shame. When undertaking tasks and doing things, we must diligently follow what is precisely taught in the profound wisdom of Buddhism, that good deeds bring good results and evil deeds bring evil results. Or perhaps it is best to act according to the law of cause across the 3 lifetimes of rebirth. Of course, some individuals may genuinely believe in such a fundamental principle, while others do not necessarily subscribe to it. Actually, I personally think that living in this vast and complex world, the so-called true value of a meaningful life is not necessarily solely about your personal financial wealth. Now, most of us here, and in fact a significant majority of people across the entire globe, probably possess this deeply ingrained and widely accepted idea of personal self-development. I see that many people in our big cities are like this too. So what is their main way of thinking? Oh, I truly desire to acquire a very luxurious, indeed a truly magnificent and exceptionally well-appointed house, to possess an especially fancy and high-performance automobile, to diligently save a substantial bit more money in a secure bank account, and to be able to send their beloved children to prestigious educational institutions in the United States, the United Kingdom, and various other countries across the globe, to really study there, and then we live a very good and fulfilling life ourselves. In our later years, we travel extensively everywhere for sightseeing and exploration. This is indeed the kind of value system we currently have. But if we only have this particular value system, it might not be entirely enough. There is something even more important. Once we have enough to eat and wear ourselves, on this basis, we should start helping the people around us. For example, if I want to send my own child abroad, then what about my relatives and friends, my older brother, younger sister, or even people who have nothing to do with me at all? Even if it's just one person, when I possess the capability, why am I truly unwilling to also send them to another country or help them get into a better school? Because you clearly know that this person around you can't afford to go to school, and you just happen to have this responsibility. It's not necessary for each of us to do something especially big. Nowadays, it seems like a lot of people, every day, many entrepreneurs are watching things like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jack Ma. Actually, if you truly want to become wealthy and achieve financial success, that goal might be too big. Maybe your target is too high. Out of more than 7 billion people in the world, only 2 or 3 have achieved that. Do you really have the good fortune to become like that? It's truly impossible. Many young people might have more idealistic thoughts. But in reality, do you actually have that ability? Do you have that kind of good fortune? Instead, you should compare yourself to those who are more similar to you within your own group and learn from the actions and experiences of those individuals who are more outstanding and successful. After learning, you yourself will also become what they are nowadays. For example, we look now, I often see the best-selling books at airplanes, all of these particular books, they are supposed to be written by the most supreme and influential people in the entire world. Actually, for many dedicated entrepreneurs like us, I'm afraid it's a bit challenging to fully grasp the concepts. Your good fortune in this life may not be able to keep up. Not everyone can truly become like that. How many people in the world want to become like that? And many of us often take the richest and most impressive people in the world and their achievements and introduce these few authoritative figures to you, including often mentioning them in speeches as well. They have this good fortune and capability. Can each of us become like that? I'm afraid that's something far beyond our reach. We should be more realistic with ourselves. As for the people around us, on one hand, you can be a role model for these people, and at the very same time, for the society that is around you, we should really start to care about it right now. If an entrepreneur doesn't genuinely care about the people around them and only blindly pursues so-called firm confidence and personal self-development and the idea of so-called self-expansion, and is always immersed in this mindset, then when you leave this world, perhaps aside from benefiting yourself and treating your employees merely as tools for making money, you haven't done anything else. That is an entrepreneur who has not succeeded. As for so-called success and failure, I don't think it's about how high their annual salary is or how many people they have, hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands. That's not necessarily the case either. The most truly successful individuals are certainly those who genuinely help many people around them, while properly maintaining your own current way of life and sustaining all your operational mechanisms. how many people can you help? This is indeed what many of us truly need to fully recognize, and it's also very much more realistic. Therefore, when it comes to interests and meaning, that is, when profit and righteousness are in conflict, you should start by caring about the smaller things. In fact, living in this world, from a Buddhist perspective, it's best not to make a living through improper means, but rather to sustain yourself through right livelihood. In Buddhism, including in the Agama Sutras, the Noble Eightfold Path is discussed, and the Mahayana tradition also talks about the Eightfold Path. However, the right path here refers to the state of a first stage bodhisattva or above. For us, this might seem rather distant. Let's talk about something a bit more basic. In the Agama Sutras, it mentions right livelihood, right speech, and the right path. What does the right path mean? It means that in our daily lives, we shouldn't be involved in many things that go against our conscience. What is right livelihood? Our work should be within the boundaries of ethics and morality, and we should not cross that line. What is right speech? It means that when we speak and act in our daily lives, we should do so properly with a clear conscience. This is the kind of behavior we should have. Perhaps you know that Buddhism also talks about 5 kinds of wrong livelihood. This applies to us monastics as well. We must prohibit and stay away from the 5 kinds of wrong livelihood. The first kind of wrong livelihood is called feigning dignified conduct. What does feigning dignified conduct mean? It means that for the sake of gaining some benefit, I actually often pretend in front of others that I am truly meditating or reciting sacred sutras, because my intention is to make others think I am a very good practitioner. I pretend, even though I am not actually a good practitioner myself. In front of others, I go into retreat or meditate. This is called feigning dignified conduct. Their dignified conduct is fake. This is the first kind. The second behavior is specifically called flattery and sycophancy. In order to achieve one's own personal goals and desired outcomes, one deliberately offers excessive praise and insincere compliments. Some people, to achieve their own aims, say things like, the merit you have accumulated is truly immense. You are a good lay practitioner. Your blessings are especially great. If you make offerings to our monastery, it is truly remarkable. In the future, lifetime after lifetime, you will definitely become someone blessed with good fortune. All of this is done to achieve their own goals by outwardly praising others. The third is called indirect hinting. Indirect hinting is a subtle kind of approach where, for example, as we know from the idiom, you give hints from the side, offering subtle suggestions. For example, I might say, recently my health hasn't been good. The reason my health is poor is because I haven't been eating well. Also, maybe I've caught a chill lately. The reason I caught a chill is probably because I haven't been dressing warmly enough. I would like to travel to various places to spread the teachings of Buddhism, but I don't have a car, so there's nothing I can do. So now, even some Buddhists and some monastics, when seeking alms in the Han regions, also use various approaches. They might say, our monastery is really struggling. And what is the reason for this? It's because resources are so scarce and the teacher doesn't have a car. The overall healthy situation for the teachers on the high plateau wasn't particularly good with it all. Now he's planning to settle down in a city in the Han region. But because he doesn't have a place to live in the city, he has no choice but to do this. Nowadays, some disciples deliberately seek alms on behalf of their teacher. This is called hinting indirectly. This is called making a living through wrong livelihood. Maybe you in the business world have similar expressions too. I don't know if you do or not. The 5 kinds of wrong livelihood I just mentioned are directed at practitioners. The fourth one is called coercion and extortion. When someone does not make offerings to him, he uses a form of extortion, saying, why don't you make offerings? If you don't make offerings, you'll go to hell. Or, you're not good in certain specific ways, then I don't want you anymore, and so on. Using this manipulative kind of method to coercively force someone to make significant offerings. The last one is called giving little and receiving much. This means giving someone a tiny, seemingly insignificant thing and then gaining a lot for oneself. For example, if I were to give you a blessed object in order to gain my own personal benefit, using another kind of language to subtly deceive others. Indeed, all of these various things in this world are ways of living by wrong livelihood. This completely goes against the fundamental rules of Buddhism. In the same way, in this world, it is also true. All behaviors that go against conscience and break the rules, whether in terms of human principles or morality, are things we should all stay away from. As a worldly business, it may be quite difficult to never violate any human morality. There may be certain challenges. It is also mentioned in our Buddhist text that when doing business, there will inevitably be some elements such as false speech or frivolous talk or various other unwholesome actions mixed in. However, for these, we can indeed repent to a considerable extent. But more importantly, if we intentionally cause harm to or deliberately deceive other individuals, this is extremely unreasonable. On this basis, we should do our utmost to care for those around us. Actually, I always truly feel that in our current modern era, many people can truly be said to carry a profound and significant kind of historical mission. You bear an undeniable responsibility of this current era. In this contemporary era, if we are able to truly and authentically embody what is profoundly spoken of and taught within traditional culture, that a gentleman loves wealth but acquires it with integrity, then truly loving our wealth is indeed a significant kind of benefit. But the way we acquire it should follow a certain principle and should adhere to a code of conduct. Only in this truly significant way can we genuinely benefit our entire society and also bring great, lasting, and profound benefit. So at this very moment in time, I truly believe that everyone present here should make full and effective use of your respective individual strengths. At the same time, it is often necessary for us to study some of the ideas from ancient cultural traditions. Dr. Toynbee also once said that in the foreseeable future, after the 21st century, he believed that the hope of humanity actually lies in the East. What he really meant by the region of the East refers to the ideology mainly based on Mahayana Buddhism and Confucianism. Under such a philosophical framework, his way of thinking is somewhat different from some of the ideas of the new Western economic schools. There are indeed differences, but when humanity reaches a certain stage, we will in fact also choose to follow our conscience. Because Eastern culture actually possesses an ancient history spanning thousands of years, and it truly has a very powerful vitality. Such a powerful vitality should be deeply rooted in the blood and genes of each and every one of our very own selves, as an ingrained and fundamental component. This profound tradition has always been passed down through countless generations. It has continued to exist and thrive generation after generation without any foreseeable end. Such a rich culture and such enduring ideas are actually truly worth every young person's careful reflection. If we don't take the necessary time to deeply reflect on these important principles, it would truly be a significant pity. So just now, I also observed many, including many entrepreneurs who are devout Buddhists or deeply interested in the profound teachings of Buddhism. And today, I also saw here, some people said that because I came here, some have also signed up for learning. In any case, I sincerely hope that throughout your entire learning process, you will find it necessary and beneficial and to embrace what we now advocate as Buddhism in daily life. This way of living according to Buddhism, in fact, the Buddha already taught us long ago, to be truly content and have very few desires. When we reach a certain point, we should have a sense of contentment. The endless expansion of human desire may ultimately lead to the destruction of our natural environment, and it may also bring about profound internal corruption among us. It may also potentially bring about insecurity and poor health to ourselves in numerous ways. However, the Buddha never actually said that we should cut off all desires completely. He never said that. What he taught was to have fewer desires. Having fewer desires means not letting them expand excessively and not having desires that are too excessive or overwhelming in their scope. Some people have told me, in that particular case, don't we truly need desires for economic growth? It's perfectly fine to have desires. However, desires should always be appropriate and moderate. A reasonable concept of development is necessary. But if your desires exceed your capabilities, if they go beyond your limits, then that's probably not acceptable. Look at all the resources on Earth today. They are being forcibly extracted by people themselves. So what is the reason for this? Actually, Americans themselves haven't even started mining their own resources. They have preserved all their valuable lands very well. Their mineral resources are among the richest in the world, yet they still protect them very well. Actually, when looking back at history, sometimes I read about history about World War II, for example. In fact, when I was in Germany and the UK, I had discussions with some professors. I said, "You all have preserved your culture very well." He replied, "No, it was only okay before World War II. After World War II, all the culture was gone. All the culture and economy shifted to the United States. What was the reason for this? During World War II, on one hand, because it was difficult to land over there, they kept watching from the sidelines. But on the other hand, while so many countries here were involved in the war, the United States consistently kept selling weapons to this particular side. By selling weapons, they made a huge profit. At that time, they were gloating over others' misfortune because they didn't suffer any losses from the war either. When you go to the UK, Germany, or France and see all those things that have been there for hundreds or even thousands of years, including some of their museums, except for a very few items, almost everything was completely lost during the devastating war. When the UK and Germany were at war, they actually signed agreements with each other. You keep 2 or 3 schools on your side, and we'll keep 3 schools on our side. Among them, the University of Göttingen was preserved. That was the agreement they signed at the time. As for the rest, we'll attack yours and you'll attack ours. In the UK, Cambridge and a few other schools were preserved. Other than that, they attacked each other indiscriminately. But later, when it came to the scramble for resources, in the end, all the resources ended up going to the United States. But now, as for the United States, there are some predictions and estimates about it. Not long ago, I had the occasion to meet a prophet. According to his estimation, the entire US economy might face something even more profoundly serious than the financial crisis experienced back then. If that happens, all the US dollars will eventually become worthless, just bubbles. There is such a possibility. At a time like this, the entire world might also potentially fall into yet another kind of widespread panic. Many prophets have said this. Of course, I don't completely believe all of this. Sometimes we might see that many countries and people around the world, when they compete and clash for their own individual interests as successful entrepreneurs and business people, it is often observed that they are driven by their own specific goals and aspirations. What kind of role do you play? Do you just stand idly by and simply watch, not really caring about anything at all? If such things happen to ourselves, actually, many of us go through ups and downs. Today, you may be a very successful entrepreneur, but after a while, you might go bankrupt. We should be mentally prepared for this possibility. Some time ago, I went to a city where they have something called a bankruptcy association. When many companies go bankrupt, they take them in and handle the situation. At the time, I asked their president, "How are you doing?" He said, "We're doing especially well right now." There are many bankrupt companies that ask us to manage things for them because in the end, they have no other options left. When there's nothing else they can do, they let us handle it. He said they're doing very well now. But this isn't really a good phenomenon. So in Buddhism, we say that all phenomena are impermanent. Actually, I personally feel that the impermanence of life, whether you look at it from the perspective of world history or from the perspective of individual history, having an understanding of impermanence is probably very important for you in many situations. Because if you have a sense of impermanence, whatever happens around you or in your own family, including when you're doing especially well in your company, you won't become arrogant. Everything is impermanent. Today, I might be in the spotlight here, but after some time, things might not be the same. And when you're not doing well at all, behind the darkness there is light, especially before the light arrives. The darkness before dawn is truly the deepest. Maybe there is still hope for me. You absolutely won't choose suicide. You certainly won't choose a path of total and utter destruction. I genuinely think that many entrepreneurs among us also recognize this view. Back in the Ming Dynasty, there was a truly profound poem called Song to Awaken the World. What does Song to Awaken the World say? In a rush we bitterly pursue, enduring cold and warmth as the years pass by. Day in and day out we toil for our families, growing old in confusion and ignorance. When will right and wrong ever end? When will worries and troubles ever cease? A clear and straightforward path lies before us, yet we stubbornly refuse to take it. There was a top scholar who wrote this Song to Awaken the World. Actually, our world is the same. Maybe it describes some of the situations we face today. Every day we are in a rush, relentlessly pursuing things. And in this kind of pursuit, we pass through incredibly cold winters and wonderfully warm springs through countless years. Every single day, we are constantly and deeply thinking about our beloved families, thinking about making money for ourselves. And as a result, without even realizing it in a daze, we've already grown old and gray, and life has slipped away. Every day, we are caught up in right and wrong. When will all this right and wrong ever end? Every day, we are surrounded by endless worries and noise. It's clear that everyone here will leave this world within a few decades, but we don't realize it, and we don't know how to cultivate ourselves. We never think about impermanence. Everything is pursued in this way. Is this kind of pursuit truly reasonable or not? In fact, many of us should genuinely take the necessary time to carefully observe and deeply reflect upon our experiences. Of course, there are indeed many different and varied ways to observe the world around us. So I think that today, there are also many Buddhist enthusiasts here, as well as many entrepreneurs. Sharing these thoughts with all of you is truly a joyful moment. Finally, I hope that when profit and righteousness come into conflict, we will not abandon our own bottom line. With our own profound wisdom and boundless compassion, if we diligently engage in truly meaningful and impactful endeavors, in the end, we can transform so-called profit into benefit for both ourselves and others. Thank you.